Ever since buying this boat, there has been a mystery looming over it. I call it the mystery of the deck beams. It's been clear from the start that our deck beams have experienced some water damage.
And the problem is, of course, when water comes in at the bulwarks, it affects everything that is wooden in this area. That being the blocking, which are these sections in between the beams, that being the deck beams themselves, and of course the plywood of the decks.
We've consulted experts, we've hunted for clues, but only one thing will tell us for sure whether these deck beams can stay or if they have to go. And that is looking at each entire beam. But to do so, we had to remove part of our decks, and now we have to remove all of the wood blocking which sits in between the beams. And when the deck beams are finally exposed, it will determine whether or not we can live with them as they are, or if we have to add several months and thousands of dollars onto this refit. And in this episode, we finally get our answer. Hello, welcome back to the boat shed. It's a beautiful day, so I thought we'd do the intro outside today. So I'm still here, obviously, as you can see. I said in the last episode that I will be going to Port Townsend to do a woodworking course, and I still am doing that, so I'm going to leave tomorrow. But today, just before I go, we're taking out a fitting that I actually need to bring with me to Port Townsend. So Aladino will explain what that fitting is and why we need to bring it.
So today's mission is called Bob Stay Fitting Removal. The Bob Stay Fitting is a component that holds the bowsprit in place. Now, we really believe that there is some places where bronze makes a lot of sense, and that is one of them. That is because the problem with stainless steel is that it can get crevice corrosion, especially where it's oxygen starved. So especially there where it's below the water sometimes or often as you're sailing, and most part of it is laminated into the hull, so that is most definitely oxygen starved, and that's the worst case or the best for that type of corrosion to happen. So one of the best materials not to have that risk is bronze. We want to get rid of the one we have now, inspect it, see if even there is some corrosion. That would be very interesting to get that confirmed too. It's kind of like finding the rot in the wood. And then we bring it over, and Tim, Todd's brother that owns Cape George Marine Works, they will fabricate one out of bronze for us. Now, they are costly pieces of jewelry, but where it makes sense, we are replacing stainless with bronze. And this is like the first place that we can think of that is very important. So basically it's two pieces of stainless that are welded together, and then they are bent open, half of it, so to speak, and then the piece that sticks out is straight, of course. You'll see it once it's out. But basically it's inserted from the inside, and then it's fiberglassed over. And it also has a rod that sticks through it, and I can perfectly see it here, the profile. So first thing I can see the mat that they've put over. So first I'll try with a chisel, start at the corners and see if I can get these layers to separate and just see if I can rip it all up. But I don't think it's going to work because it's not woven glass and it doesn't have the continuous fibers, but it's chop strand mat. So I think it will just tear to pieces. So then basically I'm going to continue with an oscillating multi-tool, and I'll try to, of course, watch the depth of cut. So luckily I was able to determine that underneath the mat there is a thick layer of roving, which of course there should be. And getting underneath that or behind that makes it a lot easier to remove because you do have those continuous fibers that you can pull on. And so now I am actually proceeding with the chisel and hammer. I way prefer that. So I'm confident that the bobstay fitting will come in now. Let's see. Got it!
Woohoo!
Hello everybody! So here I am. This week I'm gonna be all by myself. I started this morning with rearranging the workshop a tiny bit because this is still an improvised arrangement, but I moved the table around so I have some more room over there, and I have mounted the compound miter on its slide, on its base, so that is one fixed unit now, and I took it off from the table where it initially was, so I have one more table clear for putting projects on. And then I ran a new power cord just for those tools like the compound miter.
Aladino did many things while I was away. He removed the propeller, which was a difficult mission that cost him a small nick on his finger. He emptied the engine room of all its old insulation and structures in preparation for the new engine which we'll install one day. Here he's removing the blocking by carefully taking out each screw so that he can lift each piece out for future measurement and study. As I sit here editing this footage, several weeks after it was filmed, I feel warm in my heart. It feels like a window into a moment that I wasn't there for, but that I would have liked to be there for. A moment with my partner as he does the work he's so good at. Slowly, carefully, the blocking was removed, the camera recorded it quietly, and our boat progressed one minute step closer towards reaching the ocean once again.
So now I have labeled them from bow to stern, and I have taken all the screws out that were holding it in place. And now the next step is prying off the blocking. We are replacing them for sure, but I'm still keeping them and labeling them, and they all go into this box for now. Just to have measurements. Maybe it will help me set the compound miter quicker once I do the new ones. Pretty much they hold up in one piece still, so I'm just putting them in the box for now. And they are not the important part of the equation at the moment. I want to get to the beams and see them fully to make a diagnosis and move forward in this. Alright, well, this is the one with the stripped screws, so it is staying for now. Oh, and the others come real easy. I am so glad, again, to our advantage, that there is no glue. And they use the plane here, get a little bevel on it, because there is fiberglass and it's round shape, so that it does fit. Yeah, pretty nice. Alright. Number 2, starboard. Start them off like that. No, not this, I can read it. But starboard is over here. Okay, there we go. Oh, they're coming off real easy. Paperweight. There's no wood left in it.
One by one, Aladino removed each block, slowly revealing the great mystery which had been taunting us since the beginning. In what condition really were our deck beams? Would they be sufficient? Would they need replacement? How much more time and money would it take if we suddenly found ourselves needing to replace multiple deck beams? The answer was slowly becoming visible. Slowly.
And just like that, another day has gone by. Pretty tiring stuff. I'm not quite done. There is about a quarter of the boat to go still, so not that much. And then I have the glass a little cleaner, the bulwarks, so to speak, the hull. It's really nice to see how this skeleton is put together. So tomorrow I'll finish that off. I can start digging into the rot and really try to make a more informed decision of how things are looking. Are you tired? Yeah, me too. I used a chisel, more or less as a planer, like a hand plane, only that my hands were the plane part and I was using the chisel as the blade. And basically, I did this on the fiberglass, so the bulwarks. And that was to make it more even. So I got that off, I got some mat off, chop strand mat, which was loose, just drips of epoxy, and some Sikaflex still and other kinds of putty. So it was really just to clean up the surface a little bit. And the second step afterwards, that is cleaning underneath the beams, wherever I could get something loose, and behind the beams, because there is quite a gap from hull to the end of the beams and there is loose stuff in there. And then I also found this brush, and this was super good to do a final round, a final 360, and just scraping at the fiberglass, at the wood. It gets rid of salt, gets rid of 40 years of dust. It scratches up the surface a little bit. You could also use Scotch-Brite or a brush like this. So it is looking much, much better. Not the condition of the beams, but the visibility. And soon I'll actually get to getting a serious look at them. For now it was all future prep work and cleaning.
I'm back home!
Ooh, welcome back!
Thanks, Amori. Aw, it feels so nice to be home. Back to our little boat shed.
Yes.
And you've been so busy this week. I'm so
Have
proud
I?
of you.
Really? I feel so lazy.
You've done many things. I haven't actually looked at all the stuff Aladino filmed, but I did just import it into the computer, and you filmed a lot. I'm so pleased. Thank you so much.
I hope something is in focus.
I'm sure it will be. This camera's got pretty good autofocus. Okay, well, we have to review how things went. The woodworking class was amazing. I'm so glad that I did it. It really brought things down to a foundational level and built it up from there, which is exactly what I needed and exactly what I was hoping for. I feel like with a lot of the boat projects and a lot of the stuff I've been exposed to, it's sort of starting in the middle and jumping past those foundational basics of woodworking that a person should know, which has led to me always being really overwhelmed because I just didn't know, the utmost basics. I've said it enough now. This was sort of the project that we built at the end of the class. I'll take some B-roll of it to put over. And I mean, it's not perfect, but it was the first sort of woodworking project I've done on my own, and I feel really proud of it.
Oh, that's pretty amazing for first try.
Thank you. I do feel proud of it. I do feel like, I tried really hard in the class. Okay, so woodworking was awesome. I can talk a little bit more later maybe about exactly what I learned, but I was thinking the stuff that I learned might be more interesting to talk about in context when we're actually putting it to use on the boat, which is not going to be for a little while yet here. But I am thinking about, you know, trying to hone my skills and keep practicing so that I can build a few of the interior components once we get to that stage. But that stage is still a far ways off, and actually when I got home, I realized it's even farther off than I anticipated. So why don't you tell me what you sort of came to when I was away?
Well, basically I removed all the blocking, and that reveals our beams, and it reveals no good. Now we don't have to do all of them. We don't want to, we couldn't, it's a lot of time, a lot of expense, but we are considering redoing the worst ones. And yeah, that was the discovery, that some of them are further gone than what was apparent. That's a usual, or that's a common story with rot. Rot usually goes deeper and further than visible or than you expect.
And just to recap, to make sure we're all on the same page here. So when we started opening up the boat, we realized that our particular boat is built slightly differently than the more modern Cape Georges. Cape George switched to a more modern building technique. I mean, it wasn't that recently. What was it, like back in the 80s or something? Which basically, that technique allows for deck beams to be replaced an awful lot easier. And when we realized that we actually have the much older version, it makes replacement of the deck beams a lot harder because the deck beams are actually sitting underneath the cabin top. So at that point, we thought, okay, we're not going to replace deck beams. We're going to make do with what we have, and we're going to, you know, do as much epoxy treatment as we can, strengthen the existing ones in any way we can. And basically, now we are thinking that that's not good enough, or I don't know.
Well, it's that epoxy is not structural, and I mean, you use the word strengthening them. You're not strengthening anything. You're just digging out the rot and you're giving it some shape again. You're not giving it any structural fiber, which the beams have and should have. So
yeah,
it's
and
more.
I don't understand that.
Well,
yeah.
Wood has fibers in it, and they run longitudinally, and that's the lignin. That's where the strength comes from.
From that longitudinal.
Exactly,
Okay.
and it's that longitudinal fiber. Imagine glass fiber, it's the same thing. It's about the glass fibers, not about the resin. And the fibers, they sit on the beam shelf, and then they run and they're set into the carlin. And those loads are transmitted from one side to the other. That's what you need. So the thing of doing an epoxy treatment was just, there are enough wood fibers still, and we are just covering up what was rotten, but there is enough structural still. And instead, now the discovery where we have to replace deck beams is because some of those fibers are all the way gone at the bottom. So yeah, epoxy is not going to replace them.
Okay.
I mean,
That
epoxy
makes
is
a bit more sense how you explained it this time.
Epoxy is brittle, epoxy can crack, you cannot put a load on epoxy. Now, if we would make a beam completely out of fiberglass and epoxy, then it has those fibers again, which run from one side to the other, yes, but it's easier to make them out of wood.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, we are looking into replacing the deck beams. Now, before we thought that this was going to be really, really tricky, and you have realized that there is actually a way to get them out, and we think to put them back in. Have you determined that yet?
Put what back in?
Put the beam, like put new beams back in? Well, okay, this is rambling. Let's go upstairs and we'll try to give a better explanation of what's happened.
Okay. One of our most viewed episodes is Life on 28 feet. Well, I feel like the new season is Life on my knees, not on 28 feet. Anyway, I'm happy about these knee pads. They're pretty awesome. So here is the beam that we have removed. Sterling was here when we did it. Sterling's my friend. So basically, now I have one to showcase. There is these silicone bronze carriage bolts, 2 of them to hold one beam, and we were not able to get them off because they don't have a slot and they spinned loose, and the top is covered with epoxy. So we couldn't get them off, so what we did is we took the fine, good old trusty fine, and we had to cut them off, unfortunately. And after that, I didn't film it because I feel like if we proceed like this, we'll have many to showcase how we do the removal.
Well, you were just experimenting, hey? Like you were seeing...
It was to see what is the fastest way. Does it come off? Because I thought it is nailed, but if we put on force from the top, you should be able to detach nails, and it was true. And then do you not hurt the carlin? If there was epoxy or anything, you could not have gotten the beam out without hurting the wood, because mostly the wood splinters and it doesn't just separate at the seam. But instead, another discovery here was that they used some kind of glue and it separated exactly where it was glued. So it's not epoxy, it's none of the more modern glues. And they relied on nails, and at the end here they relied on 2 screws. So that was a bit of a surprise to find these 2 screws. But yeah, no, it makes sense. So basically removal just showed us that it is possible to remove them, and we have an area now that we can work with, and we should hopefully be able to put in new beams. So old one gone. I did a little bit of prep work, and I did make one test beam with what I had. It's not ideal, but it was to show us that we can do this. And it's the first one, so be kind. It's nowhere near perfect, but I did laminate it yesterday with a little curvature. It has to be adjusted slightly in the range of 1 millimeter. I've made this cut, which is the part that goes into the carlin. It's sloped into many different angles. More or less it fits, and this is the side that goes on the hull. I had it in already, but Maya hasn't seen it yet.
I haven't. You want to show me?
Yeah.
How do you get it in?
So I do it from down below, but basically like that. And then I have to see where it goes into the carlin. Well, oh, there you go actually. And now
nice.
Looking for the middle. So I did it to exact measurements first, but then it's pretty much impossible because you need to go at it. You need to go in sideways, and then the corner touches. So I made it a little shorter on purpose, and they have done them much shorter even. And instead I used this little wedge to press it in. I have to pull it up a little bit so that it's in the carlin, and then more or less position it. And now I can hammer the wedge down so it presses the beam over into the carlin. So it's just a test beam to see, and with practice all the future ones will be better. Yeah, but this is step 1, and now we really have to go buy some lumber. AYC.
That's the next adventure.
Alaska Yellow Cedar.
Finding and purchasing lumber.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm actually really impressed with how easily the deck beam came out, and also how nicely Aladino has made a test deck beam just from this garbage wood that we had lying around. So I'm really happy that we are going forward with this. I have to admit that when I got home from this class and realized that Aladino has been removing deck beams and looking into replacing them, I was nervous and a little bit upset that this was happening without my knowledge, because I really thought we were just going to go the epoxy route. But I do think it makes sense, and it's going to be a really wonderful peace of mind to have new deck beams, and that we can make them really beautiful. And it's going to be an interesting thing to show on the channel. I mean, I've never made a deck beam before, so we're going to have to learn how to do that. It seems like Aladino already has a good clue, so it's exciting. It's really exciting. It's a new challenge. It is going to add a considerable amount of time onto the refit. So it's not an insignificant decision, and it took me a moment to come to agreement that this was necessary. I still think that there's a part of me that's like, well, necessary is a bit of a difficult word to define, because I don't think that the boat would fall apart if we were to just strengthen the beams with epoxy and call it a day. But when are we ever going to have this opportunity again? Once we build the bulwarks back on, in order to get back to this stuff, we would have to destroy our nice new bulwarks. So it's absolutely now's the time to do it, and we might as well do the job properly. And I think we're also in a really, really lucky position, because, you know, if we were doing this refit in conjunction with another job and a whole other life, and this was sort of our evening and afternoon project, or evening and weekends project, then this would be an even more difficult decision. But we're in the very fortunate position that through making these videos, we can focus full time on the project, and thus it is a bit of an easier choice for us to make, and I know how lucky we are to be in that position. It's a really unique position that YouTube has given to people who are down to make videos and keen to share their refits with folks at home. So yeah, we can do this, and I am going to feel very, very good about sailing around on this boat to far-flung places once this is all done.
And I also finished a few other tasks that maybe are not completely filmed. Apology on my side, but I have continued on the engine room. Insulation is all gone. It looks much better already, and it's a little wider. And then a good friend of ours came over, and he did bring a gear puller and a butane torch. So you can guess where that led to. The prop is off, and the shaft too. So that's another thing off the list.
So I think that's going to wrap up this video for this week. We'll be back next Friday as always. If you liked the episode, please give us a thumbs up, leave a comment below, and I'm looking forward to what's to come. We're going to be making deck beams. That's a pretty big project, and it's going to be really, really fun to film and to learn about. So the next thing that we have to do is source wood. We've been phoning around trying to figure out the best place to get that from, looking at some different options. And that's it. All right. Again, thanks for watching. Huge thanks to our patrons for making all of these episodes possible and for allowing us to turn this into a job. It's pretty incredible, and I love producing these videos for you. And of course, an extra big thanks to the folks whose names are now appearing on screen for all that they do to help make sure Magic Carpet keeps being produced. We'll see you all next Friday.